Hi, it's Jenny Lynn from theopenmindtherapist.com, and I'm talking about how to clear your fear. Many years ago, when I was just 23, I was put into hospital and I was diagnosed schizophrenic, and indeed I really was very, very unwell. One of the things I remember more than anything about that time was the sheer terror, the sheer fear of being kind of out of my mind, just really completely unable to cope with life, completely unable to understand the environment that I lived in, completely unable to talk a language that other people understood. The fear was intense. There were times when I would go to bed at night and I would think there wasn't a single thing in the universe that could create safety for me. I felt so vulnerable and so afraid. Nothing could get rid of that fear. And the terror went into my body, and there were times when I used to shake with sheer terror. And I can't, if you've not felt that fear, but I'm assuming some of you have, it's very hard to describe the terror. It's as if you have no skin, no boundaries. It's as if you are totally flayed and open to any tiny energetic sensation that's going on around you. Any tiny word, any tiny change in the weather, any tiny flap of a bird's wing, anything at all can acutely affect you. So this was a fear, an extreme fear in my life. And when I analyse how I got well from that, it's very hard to describe to you how I became fully well and went on to have a career in teaching, both at university and secondary schools, and then to become a therapist of a transpersonal, spiritual kind of nature. So it's hard to describe where I've come from and where I am now, but what I think one of the elements of my healing was probably my Buddhist practice, and probably the capacity to really just tap into something beyond fear. It was like a core humanity. So I wasn't conscious of this, I didn't know that's what I was doing, but when I practiced Buddhism, when I chanted, and I remember standing in the hospital and looking at the clock tower, I'll show you a picture one day of the clock tower. Looking at the clock tower across the hospital grounds, it's a very Victorian building, and I remember chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo in my stomach. And I remember, I don't know if you know that thing when you're a kid and you stick your tummy out and you say, look mum, it felt like my stomach was full of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I remember thinking, this is really vibrating in my stomach now and it feels good. I couldn't tell you, I had no cognitive capacity to analyse what that good feeling was, but it felt good. And it sent reverberations through my gut, through my chest, through my arms, everywhere felt this sort of sense of power and reverberation in my gut. So I think it was probably building up a very deep core knowledge of my right to be here, my right to be authentic, my right to be me. And that's not a legal right, that's a moral or spiritual entitlement, if you like, but we all share. So I think when I eventually came out of hospital and, I started to slowly come off the drugs, I didn't like them, and then eventually I just stopped altogether. These are the words I said to myself. I never used to take drugs. I never used to take drugs. So do I really need to keep taking them? Do I need to keep taking them? I can choose to keep taking them if I'm too afraid to not take them. I could continue to take them. Or if I didn't trust myself and I trusted the doctors instead, because I was too afraid to trust myself, then I would have continued taking them. But the reality was I trusted myself. I trusted myself to keep coming back to this core wisdom that I knew was in me. So I kind of just learnt to trust me, really, and take that onus of control and that centered self away from other people and back into me. You know, it didn't mean I was cured and I was never going to have a fear in my life again. But I think that process, that inner process of learning to trust me and self-monitor me was really the thing that really brought me back from the brink. And I went on to express myself much more clearly. If you look at the before picture and after picture of that schizophrenic time, before then I was very much in my head trying to explain everything. And after that, I kind of thought, sod the explanation, I'm just going to feel it, I'm going to do it, feel it, say it. So there was a trust that my body knew what I needed. So that was one of the fears that I cleared. And it was a profound fear. It was an existential fear about my survival in this world. And if I could clear that, I can clear pretty much most things. However, that wasn't the only fear that I cleared. There were several more that came along several years later that I'll talk about in another video. So I hope you've enjoyed hearing about how I cleared my fear of schizophrenia and how I hope to help you clear yours. So keep watching, I'll give you a few more hints and tips.